If I asked you about the story of Minecraft, you would probably tell me that there isn't one. You'd say that Minecraft is a sandbox game and it's up to you as a player to create a story. And that's true, but I also believe that Mojang is intending to create a more hidden story, one that doesn't interfere with the player and explains the origins of the Minecraft world, and we can see the pieces of it already. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what I think Minecraft's hidden story is, by going through the last few updates. Oh, and before I start, it's important for me to say that this is just my opinion. I tried to connect the dots logically, but in the end, it's really how I interpret the game. So if you don't agree, feel free to share your thoughts. So, without further ado, we go to 1.16. The Nether update, specifically Piglins. On the surface, Piglins changed speedrunning and introduced trades to the Nether. They also emphasized gold and gave it more of a use. But going deeper, it feels like Piglins were put into the game not just for the Nether revamp, but also to progress the story. In Minecraft Legends, the primary goal of the player in the campaign is to defeat the Piglin army. But why specifically Piglins? Why couldn't it have been an undead army or an Illager army? Well, I think it's because Mojang wants to tell us that Piglins play the role of antagonists in the Minecraft lore, just like how they showed us that Illagers are villains in Minecraft dungeons. Oh, and relating to Illagers, I want to talk about souls in Minecraft. Souls are heavily stressed in the game design because of soul sand, soul soil, the wither, and the ribcage of the Warden. You basically see them everywhere. But why are they important? Well, let's think about it. So far, there are two major mobs that relate to souls. The wither is created with 3 blocks of soul sand, and the Warden has what looks like souls in its ribcage. So we can assume that souls act as a source of power or catalyst in the Minecraft lore. Why does this matter though? Well, it gives the Illagers power. Because souls act as energy, Illagers like the evokers use them to create totems that defy death, and they're able to summon souls that are hostile. And finally, with the addition of the LA, which is a friendly soul that helps the player, I think Mojang is setting this up to be an old-fashioned good versus evil battle. So, going to 1.17 and 1.18, which aren't really important. Yes, the Caves and Cliffs updates were super cool and really needed, but there wasn't any lore that I could find. But I'm not just going to skip the whole update. Instead, I'll talk about something that was a main focus of 1.17 and 18. Ores. Well, one ore in particular. Redstone was really easy to fit into this theory because it's one of the easiest ways to prove that there once was an ancient race of builders, which is fundamental in this story. In the Minecraft world, the player is the only character in the game that is able to manipulate redstone to a complex degree. No other mob can use redstone like the player, and that means that ancient builders could also use redstone. This explains structures like the desert temple and also gives us an idea of how these builders became so widespread. Unlike the villagers, they were able to use automation and redstone to make life easier, kind of like how we do today. But redstone and redstone contraptions can break easily and quickly, which explains why we don't see more evidence of these contraptions. Now, I admit that wasn't as grounded in the game as other parts of this theory, but if you follow the train of thought, it makes sense. At the very least, it's food for thought. Now to 1.19, where the biggest addition was the Warden in Deep Dark. Now, when I dove into this update for this video, I was expecting something to do with prisons. With the Warden being named the Warden, and the ancient city being so deep underground, it's easy to make the assumption that the city could have been a prison. And that was my initial theory. But if you look at the structure, it doesn't look anything like a prison. There aren't any cells or any evidence of prisoners. In fact, it bears a striking resemblance to an actual city, with its passageways, towers, and chests. And that's where I'll stop, because the rest of this story is much better suited for the full theory in a little bit. But let's move away from the Warden in Deep Dark and talk about 1.20. In the Minecraft monthly video for 1.20, we learned that the name of the update is Trails and Tales. And when we get the name, Agnes tells us that Trails is our journey and Tales are the stories that we create. Also, she literally outright says,
"Play your tales by adding exciting hints of a forgotten past."
How much more obvious can you get? Not to mention the plethora of other things added in the update that gives us hints about these ancient builder civilizations, like smithing templates, trail ruins, and calibrated skulk sensors. So with 1.20, it kind of feels like Mojang is putting up a glowing sign with an arrow telling us that Minecraft's got a past. Figure it out. Now, based on all of this and the things I've seen and heard so far, I've come up with a theory. Here's what I think the Minecraft story is. A long time ago, there lived a race of builders. These builders traveled the world, going through portals to other dimensions, exploring, creating fantastic monuments, fortresses, and strongholds. And as this group spread, they built civilizations wherever they were able. Until one day, the portals connecting the dimensions were cut off. With no way out of the dimensions they were stuck in, the builders were forced to isolate themselves from each other and adapt to their permanent environment. Before long, they became different creatures entirely. The extreme conditions of the Nether demanded that they become harsh and brutish, and so they evolved that way. And because they already had resources and bases, there was no need to retain the skills of placing and breaking blocks. They still had to be organized though, so they formed a currency out of the only valuable material near them: gold. And because their eyesight rapidly deteriorated from the environment, gold became their form of identification, and they included it in their clothes to recognize each other. Anyone that wasn't wearing gold was attacked. Only the most skilled warriors were able to recognize the difference between friend and foe. The ones left in the end couldn't get back. Something had revived the dragon, and the builders, used to peace in the end, weren't able to fight the mighty beast, so they sheltered in end cities and were forced to adapt. Over time, they transformed into bizarre creatures, and after eating the only source of food near them, adapted to teleport across areas to deal with the distance in the end. Because of this, their bodies became used to the void and turned sensitive. Thus, something like water, which envelops your body, overwhelms them. And because the end is so scarce with material, they retain the ability to take and place blocks. Problem was, there wasn't any form of currency, so there was no need for them to keep the ability of trading. Using their newfound powers of teleportation, they were able to travel across dimensions and go back to the overworld. But by this point, they had stopped being human, and their changes were permanent. And for some reason, if they ever made eye contact with human eyes, their souls would respond in resentment. And to top off this tragedy, those left in the overworld were wiped out by the same force that prevented the builders in the Nether from escaping. Eventually, this history was forgotten and time forged these groups into separate species. And as this story fades into history, we turn our attention to another group of organized people, the villagers. The villagers lived in settlements across the overworld in small villages, until a small subset of their population got interested in magic. They used this magic to enchant iron blocks into protectors of the village, and all was well for a time. But inevitably, they got into darker things, and soon the magic wielders were ostracized by the rest of the village, so they were forced to move out on their own. They made their way into the deep forest and built a base to explore magic, which is where they discovered the power of souls. They harnessed this power to boost their skills in magic and also to cheat death. They created monstrous beasts and summoned angry souls to do their bidding. Soon they became a different race entirely, and using their magic, they wrought havoc on the villages that once shunned them. But this isn't the end. In Twist of Fate, the Illagers are directly linked to the downfall of the builders. Here's a question: what creatures in the game can use souls? Well, the only group that's confirmed to be able to are the Illagers, and we as a builder are no exception. We can't craft totems of undying, we have to steal them from woodland mansions. We can't summon vexes or use fang attacks like evokers. The closest thing would be summoning the wither with soul sand, but even then, we're just assembling blocks. But there's an issue. If Illagers are the only ones that can use souls, then why does the Warden exist? We can assume that the ancient city isn't for the Illagers. They already have a mansion. Well, this is where the builders come into play. Long ago, humans and Illagers formed an alliance, and the ancient city was their project. It was a functioning city in the deepest parts of the earth, complete with pathways, outposts, and towers. Builders from far and wide lived in and passed through the city because of its importance and massive portal in the center. And the city had a guard. The Warden was created with the Illagers' ingenuity, taking the power of souls and fusing it with their past experiences with iron golems. And for a time, all was well. But that was before the builders found out about the Illagers' experiments. In the halls of their woodland mansion, villagers were being used as test subjects to create ravagers. When they brought this up to the Illagers, they were met with anger and greed, which culminated in a conflict. But the builders were vastly outmatched. The Illagers commanded the Warden and took over the ancient city with ease. They broke the portal in the city and summoned the dragon in the end, before turning their attention to the rest of the overworld. The builders that were left tried to fight back, but the Illagers were just too strong. Eventually, in no time at all, they were completely wiped out. This is a dark story, yes, but it's perfect, because this story leaves a blank slate where you are the painter. Because at its core, Minecraft is a sandbox game. It has unlimited resources, unlimited paint for you to use, so that you can craft your own story. After all, the lore, assuming there is any, is hidden by Mojang on purpose. It'll never get in the way of the game. I guess it's a hidden story for a reason.